Hey folks, thanks for joining me for this episode from the Embellished Pod. If you got it by chance, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Hopefully I can be found on any podcasting platform that exists, and if you can't find me on a platform, send me an email at embellishpod@gmail.com and I'll try to get that taken care of. You can also find video versions of this podcast on YouTube. You can find all of my links on Instagram at embellishpod or TikTok with the same handle. I have a website. It is www.embellishpod.com. It's a place to pick up these links, episode details, and more. This afternoon, I'm going to have a couple of gentlemen joining me from the Four Branches Bourbon brand. We have a really fun conversation. It's really compact, so hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whenever you happen to be consuming this. I have Mike and Greg joining me from, well, I'll tell you where I'll let them tell you where they're from. It's a brand that I think that most folks that listen to this podcast or watch this podcast are going to already know, but I want you guys to kind of give me the elevator speech on who you are.
I'll turn that over to Mike. He can tell it best.
Appreciate that, Greg. Yeah, Mike Trott, one of the founders, one of the four founders of Four Branches Bourbon. Four Branches Bourbon is, to our knowledge, the only spirits company in America, maybe the world, with four founders from four different branches of the military, ironically. Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marines. I'm the Air Force guy. And yeah, that's in a nutshell. If I had to say it in 30 seconds coming down the elevator shaft, yep. That's who we are.
Perfect. Well, and I think that your brand story is probably pretty well known. But if you would just kind of dive into how you have, you're all four from the armed forces, but being in different branches of the armed forces is going to put it in a situation where you're less likely to cross paths. So it's not like maybe you guys all went to, basic together or you were deployed together, whatever. How do the four of you congeal into one brand at this point?
No, that's a good question, John. I appreciate that. I think to your point, if you go back, we're probably talking 10 years or more. Three of us have crossed paths various times. Myself, Rick Franco, who's the Marine, and Harold Underdown, who's the Navy guy. We've poured the same sand out of our boots over the years and crossed paths. Rick reached out to me about almost 4 years ago now, 3.5 years ago. And Rick was driving home in Nashville and thinking probably about a good friend of his that he went to VMI school with, Virginia Military Institute. They went into the Marine Corps together. And then about 10 years later, Rick happened to go into the CIA as a contractor. This is, kind of back at the time when 10 years after 9/11 was pretty hot and heavy in the Middle East. And Rick recruited a good friend of his, Greg Wright Jr., to come into the CIA with him as contractor. And on Greg's first mission overseas, a few months after their training and preparing for what we did at that time, Greg's first trip overseas, actually first night in country, got involved with a situation that unfortunately Greg stepped in and saved everybody's life under an attack, but Greg didn't get to come home. And Rick had to go get him physically and bring him back home and bury him in Quantico, along with some other friends. So that was something that was weighing pretty heavy on Rick's mind. He reached out and he goes, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing a barrel of bourbon in honor of Greg and some other people we lost over those years." Rick and I actually crossed paths at the CIA, even though I was in the Air Force and he was in the Marine Corps. We both served in this particular unit at the CIA. So it didn't take me long to agree that let's do something cool, let's do something special. But we were really thinking one barrel of bourbon, let's kind of keep it easy. And Rick was like, "Hey, I think we can just bottle it up and put it on Facebook and sell it." And I'm like, "I don't think we can do that. I think there's some rules against that." But yeah, that's kind of how it started, just as a thought to give back to our community in some unique way. And then we reached out to Harold. And Harold's kind of the same way. He goes, guys, as a 33-year Navy SEAL, he goes, how many guys I've had to bring home in that flag draped coffin? He goes, "Yeah, let's do this. Let's figure this out." And then it was in a conversation with a mutual friend of ours that we've all known for about 20 years. And he was like, "Hey, you guys should see if RJ wants to join you on this mission Really great guy, former Army Special Forces, Green Beret. And we reached out to RJ. At the time, RJ was on a film. He was with Chris Hemsworth in Prague filming Extraction 2. And we reached out to RJ and kind of pitched him. And at the same time, it took less than 30 seconds. He's like, hey, let's do this. This sounds fun. And it was kind of at that moment we realized we had the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine components to this. And it just kind of fell into place from there. And I think, as we continued to, I'll take it one step further, John, just to kind of full circle. As we were getting ready to really launch this brand, we'd already taken investor dollars and was getting ready to launch when we had a little bit of a crisis of conscience, if you will, or maybe a crisis of confidence in terms of coming out with an alcohol, a spirit linked to the military, the veterans, when we know alcohol can play a negative role with veterans. And it kind of hit us. It's the elephant in the room, as we often say, but we struggled with, as guys in our late 50s and 60s, is this the right thing to do? So we spent some time together talking about it, and we realized, our careers have not been atypical. We don't run from problems. Yes, we have some bad memories, and we have seen the negative effect of alcohol, but we've also seen the positive effect of the people sitting around a campfire and sipping a little bit of bourbon whiskey and opening up and talking to friends and doing it tastefully, responsibly, and what we like to refer to as drink honorably. We ask guys and gals, don't dishonor the memories of those that you wish were still with us, whoever they may be, or don't dishonor your own memory, but drink honorably. That's kind of an important element to us. And then we leaned even more into it and said, you know what? Yes, we do. And we have drank to forget, if you will. And that's also a bad message. And it's something that we are trying to modify that narrative within our industry or our community. But that community goes beyond just veterans, first responders, to be quite honest, it's anybody. But we ask if people sip to remember and never drink to forget. And so with that said, then the next phase was to make sure we're always putting excellent bourbon in our bottles. And that's why we're sitting here with Greg Snyder to help us ensure that anything we put in our bottle meets that quality. As we said, if we're going to raise a glass of toast to a fallen or a friend or a daughter's wedding or our firstborn grandson, whatever that special occasion is, it's got to be good bourbon. It just can't be terrible bourbon. So that's where Greg comes in.
Yeah, and that it's a fantastic story, and like I said, I think it's relatively well known, but I mean, there's always another opportunity to tell it. But I'm a little bit curious, and maybe Greg is a part of this or can give a little bit of an answer. But you've gone from concept, right, to a pretty top performing brand in the span of a couple of years, or maybe just a little bit more than a couple of years at this point. How do you get there, right? How do you go from this idea to this thing that is launched? And obviously quality is a part of that, but like, how do you get here? How does that happen?
I'll let Greg jump in a minute and talk about that part of it in terms of the quality, because you're right. People may buy a brand once because of the story, but they won't buy it a second and third time if it doesn't taste good. So that's just a fact. But you're correct when you say you've got 500 to 1,000 brands of whiskeys and bourbons on the shelf. I think if we'd have thought really hard about this before we launched, we might have had second thoughts, because you're trying to stand out among a shelf set of 1,000 brands. It's hard, for sure. I think the brand messaging is catching on. And that's equally as important to us as the taste of the bourbon. It's making sure that people do really kind of connect to our brand messaging of drink honorably and sip to remember, don't drink to forget. It's tied to the taste for us, just as important. And I think that messaging, to your point, I think it's taken off because people do resonate with that. John, I can say out of all the tastings I've given across the country, and it's not meant to be that way, but when we say sip to remember, don't drink to forget, it's amazing how many people start to tear up. Mm-hmm. And you're striking a chord, and that's okay. And that's okay. We were just with some friends in Georgia sitting around a campfire, talking to a veteran who's gone through some difficult times, and he hasn't really spent time with a group in a long time. And we were sipping some bourbon and telling stories. And at the end of it, he's like, this has been so good for me to be able to sit here and to share these stories. So I think it starts to resonate. It's starting to resonate with people. And, we've been fortunate to be on Fox and Friends a couple of times. We're fortunate to be on the NBC Today show. Other people have picked us up and talked about it. So I think that's what kind of helped propel the brand over the last couple of years. But again, to my earlier point, and why Greg is a part of this mission as well, is to always make sure the bourbon is great and it compares to any other brand of bourbon it might be out there that people consider as a quality premium taste. And we want to make sure we stay in that circle of conversation too.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned this a little bit, right? You kind of entered into this market where there's 500 to 1,000 other brands that you're competing with, and many of them have been on the shelf for years and years, 10s of years, 20s of years. Some brands have been around for 100 plus years at this point, and you're trying to break through into a marketplace that's really crowded, that has a lot of price points, right? And to be honest, the $30 to $40 price range is probably one of the strongest knife fights on any shelf anywhere in a whiskey marketplace, right? There's a lot of phenomenal pours that are happening at that point. You guys kind of sit above that price point. You generate a more premium spirit and premium price range. And honestly, it makes sense to me, right? Because nostalgia is a hell of a drug, and whiskey's really good about helping you chase that nostalgia, right? You're trying to chase a memory, chase a taste, chase a flavor, whatever. But Greg, can you tell me a little bit about what it's like to try to build out the appropriate flavor profile and ideas that are going to match your retail price, being a relatively new brand and an NDP, which you guys don't shy away from the fact that you're an NDP. How do you build the brand that is going to compete with all the other folks that are at your price point, which is going to be difficult to begin with?
Yeah, I think these guys they started off on the right track. They got some good advice early on, but to be synonymous with the Four Branches, they actually started with a 4-grain bourbon. There's not a lot of 4-grain bourbons. It actually includes not only corn but rye, wheat, and malted barley. And again, there's not a whole heck of a lot of 4-grain bourbons, especially the high quality 4-grain bourbons. And so, the market has evolved. It's changed so much as to where it was when the bourbon boom started. 10, 12 years ago, I had conversations with people who've been in the business just about as long as I have. I've been in the business over 47 years now and worked for a lot of different companies, different capacities. But if you look at the production numbers and the amount of money that was being invested in all these distilleries, new distilleries popping up, the production rate that they were producing at far exceeded the sales forecast looking out in the future, exponentially exceeded it. And so, at some point in time, we knew it was going to kind of level off and kind of hit a wall. And that's kind of what it's done. But the boom's not over. I mean, I think the market is still extremely strong and healthy. It's just leveled off. But this rapid uprise of production, now there's so much aged bourbon available, a surplus out there, that the business strategy that these guys have adopted and we're going forward with is that there's some great high quality bourbon out there that the prices have just come so far down that it's more economical now to acquire good quality whiskey. And that's kind of where I come in and try to help them out. We do a little treasure hunting. We find some good whiskey. And above that is that, you can go out from time to time and you can find good quality whiskey and put it together and bottle it. But to be consistent, high quality, you have to have an inventory level that sustains your growth. And so that's kind of what we do. After the first of the year, we're actually evolving to a 4-grain distillate. Previously we've gone out, we found some rye bourbon, found some wheated bourbon, blended them together to come up with a great flavor profile. moving forward, we found an inventory of sustainability where we can have that great flavor from a 4-grain distillate going out in the future, a number of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that, I mean, you kind of led into a question I already kind of had in front of me. You're laying down barrels of your own distillate. I think I read somewhere it was near 500 barrels, which it may be more or less than that. But that's a big capital commitment in a market where I agree with you. I don't think that we're kind of on a downward trend. We're on a plateau, but that could be scary with having 2,000 different distilleries and 1,000 different labels in the marketplace, and you're making a capital investment of your own distillate at this point. What is driving that particular decision now, right? Because you even mentioned barrel prices are coming down. It's a really good time to be buying aged stocks because the prices are going lower than they've been in a long time. You could continue down that path. Is it just trying to get to the reproducibility of your spirit, or is it building a broader strategy for the brand?
Yeah, I think that's to be seen in the future where we actually take it. Right now, the focus is, and the business strategy is focused on let's take advantage of the current market situation. And we, as I said, we've been able to find a good inventory of high quality bourbon that's going to carry us out into the future. If things change, that's how when you adjust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, react to the situation that's in front of you. And, I think I read somewhere that you guys are participating with Bardstown Bourbon Company on a number of things, likely for production. But I think I also read about Brindiamo group that you guys have used for strategy in the past. I guess I see, or at least historically I've seen, it's less common. It's usually one or the other, right? There's a lot of people that are using Brindiamo. There's a lot of people that are using Bardstown Bourbon Company, both fantastic to work with. But you've created this group of specialists, right? And now you've got Greg that's kind of shepherding your flavor profile. Walk me through how you've got a creative control that you want to do here. Walk me through what the creative control maintaining is while leveraging all of the expertise, because everybody's going to bring their ideas to the table. How do you bring it back to the core of Four Branches?
I think it comes down to the balance, right? I mean, I think what Greg was alluding to right now, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a buyer's market, but it's pretty healthy compared to when it was when we started 4 years ago. We were buying barrels at a pretty high price. That was a sticker shock. Now that we're seeing those prices come down, and I think you're also seeing a lot more, like Greg mentioned, a lot more inventory available throughout the country. So as someone who is sort of agnostic to where it's distilled per se, but it's about the taste and the quality. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. And I'm not, going to sit here and say that we would not entertain, I'm just throwing it out there, bourbon from Colorado or from Texas or Washington. South Carolina is making some great bourbon. Obviously, Kentucky is that's the name that everybody knows, right? It's surprising that people in America still thinks bourbon has to come from Kentucky. As we know, that's not necessarily true, but that's where the majority of the bourbon comes from. And at the end of the day, for us, because we're not a distillery, and it's kind of part of our DNA, right? As veterans, we come from all over the country. We come from every state. So part of our story is to make sure that we're elevating everybody's sort of story that's in our product. Doesn't mean that down the road we may not see some other states bourbon or blends. We've had our third LTO out now, and it's good. And it's that's kind of where it's fun working with guys like Greg, is to look at what are some other LTO opportunities that we experiment with, that we just might come out with a core SKU with that LTO down the road, right? So when you find a particular LTO that is responding well to the community, your customers like it, at the end of the day, as a brand, you want to provide what your customers like. So to your point earlier, we're 2 years into this, right? If we were bourbon, we would just now be legal, right? So we're early with this, but I think you can take a lot of other people's, sort of roads to victory that work. But I think sometimes, as Greg mentioned, the whole industry is changing right now. You're seeing some distilleries go out of business. You're seeing some distilleries that were breaking ground a few years ago stop construction. And I think to a degree that works in our favor as a non-DSP because we have more options. And it's kind of an exciting space for us. But at the end of the day, I think, John, like I said, our bourbon is a story. It's often said a bourbon without a story is just brown water. And I think there's probably a little bit of truth to that. But most bourbon lovers, they either like giving them as gifts, and if they give it as a gift, they want to know there's a story attached to it. And also, I would say if you're looking at my shelf set in front of me, and I'm sure Greg has one, and you have one behind you, you have more than one or two bourbons, and there's usually a couple of bourbons that's something special to you. And we're hoping that our consumers, those who look at Four Branches Bourbon, whether you go through one or two bottles a year, it's always something that's on your shelf, and you have it for that special pour. You mentioned earlier, there's a reason why we're not a $25 or $30 bottle of bourbon. It kind of plays against our concept of veterans going and buying a bottle and taking it home and killing it. We don't want you to do that. So we're not going to get in that cheap bourbon space. That's just not, it's not who we are.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of ways that I could go with this because you said a whole bunch of stuff in there that was really good. You made the comment about the LTO that could become a SKU, and I've seen some other brands do that pretty effectively. You talk about storytelling being really important, and honestly, most folks are drinking a whiskey based off of either the story of the whiskey or a story that is a part of the whiskey. Like, I drank it with this person, or it has some sort of a memory or core memory with it, and oftentimes your higher priced whiskeys. I mean, to be fair, if I go back to the college version of me, the high priced whiskey was Maker's Mark, right? Because we were all broke drinking, whatever's on the bottom shelf. And so you get Maker's Mark, that was like a big deal. And so it's a celebration whiskey. Well, now that we all have adult money, we start leaning into things like, Four Branches, which becomes our celebration type whiskey. And you drink it with, friends and peers. And it's a communal environment. But, I'm curious. I've got a question here for Greg. You guys have a really compelling story, but you guys brought Greg on to be your master distiller, master blender, but he's, 47 years working in major distilleries. He could work anywhere. So Greg, what makes you work here? Like, what made this one the thing? Like, there's a lot of places that are hiring every day, and when you carry a name like Greg Snyder, you can go a lot of places.
Well, thanks, John. But yeah, it's one of those things. I guess 8 years ago, I decided to get out of the corporate rat race, and I started my own consulting company. And at that time, my wife was having some health issues, so it made sense for me to start a consulting business. That way, I could pick and choose, the amount of work I did. It provided me flexibility and time that I could take my wife to doctor's appointments and rehab session, whatever. And so that's how I really got into the consulting thing. And I have been blessed. I've worked with some great people, some great companies. But when this opportunity came along, actually Mark Irwin, the CEO of Bardstown Bourbon Company, is the gentleman who introduced me to these guys. And I said, I'd be very interested. I'd be, quite honestly, I'm very honored and privileged to have the opportunity to work with these guys. I mean, when you look back at their history alone, their military history, these guys are truly American heroes, and they may not think that or tell you that, but their military background is phenomenal. And thank God we've got people like them that have kept this country protected and free for so many years.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely resonates, deeply with pretty much everybody. And you mentioned their service, so I want to dive a little bit into Four Branches is not just a brand, right? There's other things that you're doing here. You do some charitable giving as well, right? So I've read where you've raised nearly $500,000 for veteran organizations. Kind of explain to me the importance of that part of the brand's identity.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. And that came out from day one. We sat down as founders and said, okay, once we decided we were going to move forward, what was our major mission? What was our goal? As Harold quickly said as a Navy SEAL, he said, first and foremost, this is a no-fail mission. So when you get guys like Greg on the airship, you're not getting off. We're going to make sure this is successful. And how is it going to be successful is that we want to make sure that, like I said, mentioned, there's 4 pillars. It's kind of simple to us. We want to lean into changing the narrative around alcohol and veterans within our community. And we think that will sort of ripple effect to other communities as well. First and foremost, we want our brand messaging of drink honorably, serve honorably, double entendre, sip to remember, to always stay associated with this brand. And you mentioned it, bourbon is such a reflective spirit. And you can't hardly sit down and have a glass of bourbon, especially if it's neat. It's kind of funny, right? If I want to sit down and chill and cool down and maybe have a mindless moment, I'll tend to put a rock on it, or make a cocktail because my mind doesn't go there. But when I put it neat in a bottle, man, my memory, I start going back and reflecting. I think about my dad, I think about my son, and just different reflective moments when it's neat. I don't know what that is. I mean, maybe Greg, you can speak to, is there a chemistry effect of that? Because I don't know why. But giving back was number 3. We always wanted to make sure we're giving back, not only because it's the right thing to do. And to your point, we're not even quite profitable yet. We're getting close, but we have been able to help raise just a little less than $500,000 for about 18 different charities and organizations. We'll probably begin to focus on a few specific going forward. But a lot of those organizations were close to us over the years that helped us out at different times, and different colleagues and friends that's gone forward and started foundations and organizations that we believe in, we wanted to support. We just supported an organization or a gentleman. He's a British former Special Forces. He and his son was rowing across the Pacific, 48 days from California to Hawaii, and to raise awareness for veterans' mental health. And we were all in, so we helped sponsor that row. And now there's some exciting news that there's going to be a pretty significant brand film about Four Branches that's going to be related to this gentleman and his son's roll across the Pacific. And then fourth, the brand has to be successful, right? If the brand is not financially successful and it's not a solid company, then the other 3 can't get done. So those are the kind of 4 pillars that we're built on, and we continue to strive to ensure we hit all 4 of those. Brand messaging stays on point. Always good bourbon in a bottle. Our give backs are always part of our efforts, and we're a solid company.
There could be an easy question, like, how do you balance being profitable versus being charitable? And you already mentioned you're not quite profitable yet, but you're still making space for the charitable portion of it. So it says a lot about the core identity of the people that are shepherding the vision of kind of where you're going. Now, we've talked for 28 minutes at this point. We haven't talked once about any one of the SKUs that you have, and so I think we probably do need to take some time here. Tell me about what you've got on the shelf in the market right now, any LTOs that you've done in the past or that you're going to do in the future, anything that you can talk about. Let's get these in front of folks, because we want to help support and make you profitable so you can continue to be charitable at the same time, right?
We appreciate that, John. I'll let Greg jump in on the SKUs, but I will mention we had some exciting news a couple of weeks ago. We were being tested in a few Army Air Force exchange stores. Those are the base exchange stores. And we had a good meeting in Dallas, which is the headquarters of AAFES. And they have put in an order for 750 cases to go into 92 stores globally. So that's kind of fun to see us coming out of the military, knowing that I spent 6 years in Germany, and to know that I could walk into my base and to see Four Branches sitting on that shelf is going to be pretty cool. But we'll be in the Pacific. We'll be in Korea, Japan, all over Germany and Europe. So that's exciting new news, to your point. Yeah. We want to get that out there to our guys and gals in uniform, but I'll let Greg talk a little bit about our current expressions.
Yeah. So starting off, we're right now, we're still relatively small. We're in actually 7 different markets. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Mike. We're in Kentucky, Tennessee, Arizona, Virginia, Maryland, Washington, D.C. And what am I missing?
Florida.
Oh yeah, Florida. That's right. And then, but you can buy it online in most states. And a big portion of the sales are actually online sales. But this one here, this is our Four Branches Founders Blend. That's the core flagship brand. Again, it's a 4-grain bourbon. It is 90 proof.
96.
And the flavors. I'm sorry.
96 proof.
Excuse me, 96 proof. And it's fantastic. I mean, if you've had a chance to taste any. In addition, earlier this year, we came out with Four Branches Continental. It was a tribute to the 250th anniversary of the Army, Navy, and Marines. And so it was actually a 9-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon. Again, great bourbon. It's a mash bill at 102 proof. It's mash bill with 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley. But that's currently what we've got. And Mike, I know that before I got involved, they did a couple other LTOs that may still be out there.
Yeah, the other LTO, they're all gone now. One was Black Ops, and it was a tribute to a gentleman who wrote a book called Black Ops, and it was his time in the military and the CIA. And Rick Prado he left Cuba at about 9 years old when Castro came in. His mom and dad was able to get him out, and then later joined him in Florida. But Rick went on and had a distinguished career in the CIA, and we took a really great 9-year Kentucky straight bourbon, but we finished it for 6 months in Caribbean rum cast, a little bit of a nod to his Cuban roots, which is also fantastic. But yeah, it's kind of joking with the Founders Blend 96 proof. The reason why I caught that real quick is 96. We were kind of dabbling because we got to work with the guys at Bardstown Bourbon Company. We came up with this blend, and Steve Nally actually helped us with this blend. But we were kind of going back and forth between 94, 95, 97 proof, and we were mixing it down and trying to come up with that sweet spot. And we were right around 96, and then all four of us started joking that in the military you get a 4-day pass, 96 hours. So we're landed on 96 proof. So
staying true to the identity of what you have going on. I guess if you were to put kind of a looking glass, 5 years into the future, do you imagine you're still sitting with one core blend and, LTOs happening every so often? Will you stay, are you wanting to stay explicitly in bourbon, or do you lean into just whiskey in North America? Because you could have Tennessee whiskey, or you could do American single malt, which is a new thing. It's not a new thing. It's a newly legally defined thing in the marketplace. If we were to, kind of hop out there, 5, 7, 10 years from now, and somebody hasn't shown up between now and then and said, I'll give you $1 billion for this brand, what does it look like?
I think it is, to your point, because we're not, and Greg may have another thought too, but because we're not a distillery, and you never say never, right? But I don't see us being a distillery. I think there's too many great products being made out there. And there's a lot of great distillers that don't have a brand. They don't have a bottle to put it in, right? So that's where we go work with them, and guys like Greg work with them to kind of look at what is our consumer telling us they want. At the end of the day, we want to provide what our audience wants to consume. And just always making sure that it's quality. I've had some good single malt that's really interesting to me that I'd like to see that. I think, and if you look down the road 4, 5, 6 years, you will see multiple SKUs. I can say we're not going to be like some brands that come out with 10, 12 SKUs. It's just too much. It's too confusing. It's too confusing to us. We'd rather stay with.
It's too confusing for me too. I promise.
I don't get it. I mean, I do get there's a business behind it, but to us, we want to have that core, like Greg mentioned. We have that 4-grain coming out it is a 4-grain mash bill that we're really excited about. We'll be transitioning to. We've been working on that one for some time, but that'll be our core. But I think you will see another 2 or 3 SKUs. We've talked about some liqueur that might come out seasonal for some of our consumers. we have to realize we have probably more than 50% of our consumers that buy, especially online, are female. And so we're going to listen to what they want as well.
Right.
As you know, if you can come out with a high rye and a high proof, and you're going to have 2 or 3% of people give you high fives for those. The rest of the audience, that's a little too hot for them. It's a little too high. So I think that's where the LTOs come out. We speak to that audience that's looking for that limited rare kind of stuff. It's special to them, but I think you will see multiple SKUs, but you're not going to see a dozen or so like that.
Yeah. Well, and I know we're pushing up on time. I have to depart here in just a few minutes. I guess my last question is are we going to be able to see you guys in person anywhere? Are y'all going out to any events or festivals or pop-ups or anything going on in the next few weeks?
Next few weeks, I think Greg may have some. I'll let him kind of jump in. The 4 of us are going to be in Nashville, Tennessee. 4 founders doing a founders blitz. We have some special things going on in Nashville the first week of October. We do try to get out to several events throughout the year. Randy Couture is our brand champion. We travel and do a lot of things with Randy sometimes. Randy is actually going to be the grand marshal of the Veterans Day Parade, November 11th in Phoenix, Arizona. And so I may be there here with Randy, but I know Greg and Nick, our national sales director, and all of us try to get out to different, bourbon festivals and events. But Greg, you got something coming up?
Nothing real soon. I live right across the river from Louisville, Kentucky, and Nick Nelson, the national sales head of national sales that Mike talked about, he lives over in Louisville, so we're close together. So occasionally, I'll get together with him with some local events in Kentucky and some of the festivals, smaller festivals related to that.
Gotcha. All right. Well, like I said, we're on the edge of time. If there's anything else that you guys want to cover, you got a couple minutes here. Tell me what you got. If not, we'll put a pin in it and we'll have to continue this conversation again later on.
I think we just appreciate, your audience and the consumers in general who support this brand. It's actually been quite inspiring. We have found the actual industry itself has been open, coming from 4 guys that spend our time either in the CIA or special operations group. We're not used to people being friendly. So it's kind of cool to sit down and people willing to share and give you advice. And usually when we hear that, we always second guess their motives. But I can tell you, there's a lot of guys like Greg in this industry that are willing to kind of give you a hand up and pull you up. They know we don't know exactly what we're doing. My grandpappy didn't, he wasn't a distiller. And I did have an uncle that ran bootleg, but in Tennessee, because that's where I'm from. I'm from East Tennessee. But no, we just appreciate your audience and giving us this time to talk about Four Branches, and we look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I said, thanks, gentlemen. Time is the one thing you can never make more of, and you gave me some of it, and so I'm greatly appreciative. We'll have to continue this conversation on again later on.
Please do. Thank you, John.
Thank you so much, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of the Embellished Pod. If you enjoyed this, please leave me a review on whatever platform you're consuming this on. Leave a comment if at all possible. Hit me up on social media on TikTok or Instagram at Embellished Pod, and you can give me a follow so you can keep up with what's going on here. I can be found at www.embellishedpod.com with all of my links, accounts, contact details, and more. Thanks for stopping by.